Hola, first gen. Before I get started with today's episode, I did want to take a moment to let you know that in this episode, certain sensitive topics are mentioned. We don't spend a lot of time speaking about them, but they are mentioned throughout. And so I will let you know what those topics are. I'm just giving you a moment to pause or stop if you or anyone that's listening around you could be triggered by sensitive topics. The topics that are mentioned are abuse, suicide, and self-harm. If these topics are sensitive or triggering for you, please know that I would like you to prioritize your mental health above all. And so if you feel uncomfortable or distressed at any point during the episode, please feel free to pause, take a break, or not listen to it at all. Thank you for your understanding. And if you choose to continue, we'll go ahead and get started. Hola, you are listening to First Gen Healing, a podcast on Latinx healing and awakening journeys. My name is Xtal Luna. I am your host, and I'm going to let today's guest introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Xtal West, and I am from Sacramento, California, Nisenan territory. I always recognize the indigenous land that I'm on, and invite everyone to also do the same in their own path. I was born and raised in Sacramento, South Sac particularly. But I also feel like in that disclaimer too that like I'm a bit of a tortuga in that I feel like I've held my home on my back and I have lived in many places. When I graduated from college, I was the first in my family to graduate from college, go to college, receive education. So there was this liberating experience I had of studying abroad in Costa Rica. And I was like really involved in college. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I never want to move back home. And so when I graduated, I moved to Arizona, and then I moved to the Bay for grad school, and then I moved to Georgia and then Washington, and that's where I had my baby, and baby made me come back home. So I'm a little bit from everywhere, and I love all of the stories that come along with those pieces of my journey.
Yeah. Oh, I love that analogy. I'm a little tortuguita.
Mm-hmm.
How funny.
Yeah.
I used to call myself, well, I still do. I feel like I'm a chicken, a daring chicken.
Oh
Because
yeah, yeah.
I get scared of doing everything, but I still do it, you know? So it's
Oh
funny
my
how.
gosh. Heck yeah. Well, it's like the chicken that crossed the road, huh? Where you're like, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it, and you did it, and you keep doing it, and you keep doing it.
Exactly. So, one of the things that I like to start off with is giving the listeners a little bit of a picture on your family. And, you know, if you
Mm-hmm.
have siblings, what are you the eldest, middle, kind of paint the
Mm-hmm.
picture for us, and also your cultura.
Yeah. So my upbringing has been a source of a lot of, I think, my own academic explorations. So I'm a lecturer in ethnic studies, I'm an embodiment coach, and I'm a postpartum doula. And in between all of that, I'm an art maker. I write poetry, I love to write. And I also am a cultural alchemist in a lot of
Mm.
ways. And so all of that has like these life callings that I've explored and have been on, I think have been rooted in my cultura and my upbringing deeply, like looking at the complexities. So I was raised mostly by my grandma. My grandma was born and raised in Chihuahua.
Mm.
Um, and she moved with my mom and her brother and her sister to Texas, to El Paso, when my mom was, or she had my mom there. So my mom is like a Tejana, which is its own
Mm-hmm.
culture, and
Mm.
me, I was born in Califas, and so I have my own like Chicana style. I identify as a Chicana, and I identify as a Chicana politically, meaning
Mm.
for me, it is an activated term that means that I am self-assessing and healing and nurturing futurities of my community, that I'm engaged in activism, and that I have a relationship and responsibility to my ancestors and to the 7 generations ahead of me as well. So I honor like my indigenous ancestry, my grandma's Tarhumara, and I also interweave that into a lot of my healing work. But um,
Mm-hmm.
so being raised by my grandma, um, and my mom was a single parent. My father was incarcerated, still incarcerated, and I grew up. It's this very complex experience of I was in a scholarship in Catholic school, but on the
Okay.
weekends I was in the family housing units at the prison uh, with my dad, and
Mm.
we would have a cooler full of food, and my dad would be in the bubble bath with us, and I was like a little princess. And to me, he was the best, most loving father. And it wasn't until my father was going to be released from prison, when I was in fourth grade, that I had realized that not everyone goes to family housing units to visit their fathers
Mm.
on the weekend. Like I had just, it was so normal for me my whole life.
Yeah.
Um, and when he got out of prison, unfortunately, he was um, very addicted to methamphetamines, and I experienced a lot of violence in my home.
Mm.
I was in and out of drug houses. My mom was working 3 jobs often, so she was unable to be like part of that safety net for me. And often it was my grandma who was home for me in my upbringing. So all of that said, these complexities of being in Catholic school, and also like growing up in a unsafe community, or a community that is also a food desert, um, there were these different complex experiences in my childhood that um, I think made me feel scared in a lot of ways, and small. And
Mm.
at the same time, my routes of finding safety were in school. And so I did really well in school. I wanted to be the superhero in my family and be the source of my mom's pride and ease.
Yeah.
I wanted to all I needed affirmations, I needed love, I needed to feel seen. So school was the place where you did the good things and you get the good grades and you get that little burst of like feeling purposeful.
Mm-hmm.
And no one was trying to talk to me about college. No one was trying to talk
Mm.
to me about my education. I was like a really high achieving student. I was involved in folklorico. I played soccer a lot throughout my youth. And um, it was actually my folklorico instructor who was like, "Girl, what are you doing after high school?" And I was like, I don't know. I was very directionless. And my mom, with her, I think, honestly, don't know if it's she was overworked and overburdened and burnt out. And I can only imagine now, with me being a mom, um, what my mom was going through while also trying to parent two little girls. So I have a sister, a younger sister. She's a few years younger than me, and I have a half brother as well who's between our
Mm.
ages.
Okay.
And um, all of it has just like, it's all just these very complex experiences. But I think my mom too had this feeling of like, as long as you're happy, like chill, like cool, I did my job. But not really knowing how to dream with me either. And I
Yeah.
think I've always been a very dreamy person. Like, my grandma got me really into books. It was part of our like daily routine to walk to the library
Mm.
and pick out like these little 10-cent books for sale, and like we just hang out there. The library's a free space, has great resources for families who didn't have a lot, and it's where I became this little dreamer, right? Of like this person who believed in these magical worlds where love was abundant and flowing, and everything's made of like Lisa Frank posters. um like that's
Yeah.
my, and so I think all that to say my cultura, like my grandma, her remedios, her lessons, these spaces of loving awareness that were parts of my seeds of light along my journey play this part in how I interweave storytelling and creativity into not only healing my inner niña, but also like healing and offering spaces of healing for my students, for my clients, and for community in general. Like I want to, like
Yeah.
if anyone I say, I'm like, I just want to burst out with love. And it's that's just, yeah, that's all been part of just this duality of feeling deep pain and also deep wells of love.
Wow. Yeah, as I hear you talk, I definitely hear that storytelling weaved in throughout, you know? I think like it's already shining through. And I was definitely, you know, as I'm listening to what you've gone through as a child, and there's just a lot of experiences that I don't personally share, but also a recognition that at the root of it all, there was a need for safety and for being seen. And I think that that's something that we've seen on the podcast with previous guests, and that I see with my clients that are first gens, that that is something that is what maybe is centered around the emptiness that we may feel, or what drives our search for it, right? So I've heard you speaking about healing a couple of times, or you've mentioned it here and there, and the podcast is about healing and awakening journeys. So I'm wondering which one resonates more. I think I have an idea, but I want to hear from you, like which one resonates more, and when do you think that journey started for you?
It's such an interesting transition I feel that I'm in. I always refer to Gloriensaldo as Nepantla, like feeling in between worlds and this process of conocimiento, right? There's just like these different spaces of like awareness that happen in our lives. And I think for me, I have been on, because of all the trauma I experienced and these unlearnings and deep journeys in therapy that I have taken from a young age, throughout college and beyond. Um, in my 20s, particularly, I would say that transition from healing into being activated in an awakening is what happened for me, where um, I, at 22, tried to end my life. And there was a year of being in an inpatient facility, and an outpatient facility for that year, trying to convince myself that it made sense to still live with all of this deep heaviness that I was holding.
Mm,
Like, how do I make sense? And I had to decide. Um, I had to decide that if I was going to um, still be here, that I had to make it feel good for me, and that that mattered. And there were these steps I was taking, in my 20s, that I was learning and healing so much. And I think finding value in purpose and being of service to my community. But there was still something, because I ended up in a really toxic and abusive marriage, at a time and it was so confusing for me to I've healed so much. I've worked so much. I got my master's degree. I'm working in a career I love. I get to do all these awesome things. How did this happen for me? I thought I valued myself, and that's not to say I didn't. Right? Like there's so
yeah,
many layers to those experiences, and
yeah.
um why we stay like this concept of aguantando, right? Aguantándonos, of being the
Mm-hmm.
one to be the glue to fix, to hold it, to like, oh, I can see puedo, it's
Yeah.
fine. And then it's not fine. Your spirit just like detaches from you in so many ways. And so um becoming a mom, I was like, good, I was a professional tia. I was like, I'm gonna be the professional tia forever, and I love it. And then I became a mom, and it was very complex for me. But there was this moment that, because I had antepartum depression and anxiety and postpartum depression and anxiety, and after I had my baby, I was at his doctor's appointment with him for his little checkup, And I just remember I had from one moment just when he was in my belly, I just was like, I love you so much. I would sing to him, and but I was always scared of how much I loved him. I felt like I was overwhelming him. And there was this moment at the doctor, and I was holding him and I was giving him little kisses. And I said, I was embarrassed. I said to the nurse, I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I must be like stressing him out with all these little kisses." She looked at me and she was like, "That's not possible." I'm crying. She said, "That's not possible. You're his mom." And I thought, I've never known that. Like, my love has always felt overwhelming and too much for my family system.
Mm-hmm.
My mom didn't know how to hug and be cariñosa because she had to be so tough.
Yeah.
And life didn't offer her that opportunity to allow herself to feel nurtured because she feared rejection. And so here I was becoming a mom. And for as loving and of service as I have been my community, the love that I held within myself mirrored to myself in this baby who only knows how to receive my goodness, um, and see me in the best light. I felt, oh my gosh, I'm too old. So I was thinking of myself as too much. And it was in that moment that nurse gifted me this like permission
Yeah.
to be full, like to be full, not to be so self-critical, to recognize that my wellness is directly tied to the thrivance in my ecosystem.
Mm.
And so I have a deep responsibility to thrive and live, and for my son to know my joy. And I left my marriage
Wow.
and I came to Sacramento and I started over from scratch. Um, and I'm thriving.
That is so powerful. And again, like I mentioned, I definitely hear the storytelling of how you bring out different aspects, and it's beautiful just to hear the way that you came into this knowing of love and how it should feel, right? Or maybe how there is a time and
How
place
enough?
for it. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not you, it was the environment that you were in, right? Or it was the people that couldn't hold you in that moment. But it just brought me back to the lesson that I think has been super powerful, that I've still am clearing in, like you said, there's moments of awareness, but you come into more and more as you grow or experience things. And it's this knowing of, it starts with you, right? The way that you see the world is how then it's reflected back to you. And so if you think you're too much, then of course, in a way, you're kind of projecting that to your son of, this is too much. Oh, it's me, I need to stop. So, like you said, what a beautiful gift from that doctor to, in that moment, reassure you and affirm you that no, like, this is exactly what you're here to do, and I think it gave you permission to then continue to show that love to him. And how beautiful. I definitely share having a strong mother, that has to be strong. And I consider myself an empath. And so in the looking back period of my lifetime, I've realized that my whole life I have felt the walls, and that hurts, you know
It hurts.
it's painful, and of course they don't necessarily feel the walls, but we're beings that are coming in without all of the experiences that they've had, and are wanting and willing to receive that love. And so because of their kind of life story, they're not able to provide it in the way that maybe we need it, right? And so feeling those walls for such a very long time and trying to break them down, and internalizing the fact that there is walls as like, oh, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, there's something that I'm doing wrong, can be a really painful experience, and definitely carries through to adulthood. So
Mhm. Yeah, you're making me think about just the practice of having boundaries. And I think, I've been a very like I am a very easy person, I think. And in the sense of like I'm easygoing and I will always choose ease and peace. Um, but sometimes like the edge of that, the gray zone of that moves into forsaking, right? Self-abandoning,
Mm-hmm.
and allowing to like allowing ourselves as empaths to prioritize the wellness of everyone without recognizing that we're part of that equation too, and that actually that practice of setting boundaries is an invitation to say, join me in my in our mutual wellness. This is where we can exist in reciprocity, right? Where thrive-ins exist. But oftentimes, because of that transition from survivalhood our in our communities, our systems, our family systems, our inner worlds, like there's these experiences we have of those walls, the blockages, and the inability to fully see each other. And I really like, so much of my journey has been on remothering, healing. Like, there's so much beautiful work happening around the Madre wound, and conversations around the complexities of motherhood, and the ability that we have to nurture ourselves and each other, and have chosen family and cultivate relationships that reflect the loving vibrations we want to see. And it's the wildest thing, I think, for me, with like knowing, putting boundaries up, or inviting my family into respecting these new and protecting like these practices that allow for us to like be seen, or like fully held, or like try some, like moving away from threatening chanclas or like punishment
Mm-hmm.
and like punitive approaches, or
Mm-hmm.
like the idea like children are to be seen and not heard, or like there's an unlearning that happens. And then there's, I get excited, I'm like, oh my gosh, motherhood feels like an awesome experiment in in seeing how what it looks like when I pour hella love into this human being.
Mm-hmm.
And what does it look like when I allow myself to be joyful and like playful, because my mom wasn't playing with me. Now I'm like, oh, I gotta learn how to play.
Yeah.
I'm learning how to play.
Yeah.
And it is like it's a wild invitation that life has offered me to
Mm-hmm.
engage in. And it's beautiful too, that
Yeah.
practice of remothering, and seeing ourselves and our humanity,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
and our needs too.
Yeah. I definitely want to talk and come back to the mother wound and the inner niña. But before we do so, I want to get maybe like a timeline of, because you've mentioned a lot thus far. So
Mm-hmm.
after that difficult period in your early 20s, did the Costa Rica trip happen after? So I'll tell you the things that maybe you can timeline out for me. Costa
Oh
Rica,
yeah.
going to school, getting your master's, getting married, and then leaving that marriage and having a child. So maybe you can help me organize that in terms of
Yeah,
like
yes, I will.
distance.
Mhm. So let's talk about being first gen in college, right? It's rough.
Yeah.
Um, I went to a very high, like prominent university, and there's processes. I'm actually an advisor as well in education, right? So I have so many criticisms and critiques of what happens in higher ed, right? Like, and how
Mm,
students are pushed out, and um, particularly being first gen, the weight of the world on your shoulders to navigate these systems, that are also pulling and extracting your knowledge, your spirit, your and expecting you to know all of the things when there's not always the support system and infrastructures available, or there, right?
yeah, I think sometimes we think the win is getting to college, but we don't think about like everything that is required after. And
Right.
I definitely want you to continue to kind of outline for us the events, but one reason that I ask for the outline is something that I've been noticing as I've been having more and more of these conversations is that usually this kind of like wave of realizations come at some point in or after college, because college
Mm-hmm.
or education some in some way, especially those who get to move out, it creates some space
It does.
for things to come through, maybe for us to think about, the life that we lived up until that point. So just wanted to like put that parenthesis in there, but please continue.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So I was super involved in activism. I was in Mecha, and I was in at every march, at every demonstration. Also recognizing that this became the space where I was able to feel all of this internal rage that I had experienced,
Mm,
right? I was experiencing rage for not only my lived experience, but also my community, what was going on. And it was a catalyst and a space to engage in anger for the first time, right? And like knowing what that feels like. And also with all of the balance of being first gen, the responsibilities to community, to family, to obligations, to how we hold expectation that's placed on it and how we respond to it. It's like, yeah, you got to show up. You have to show up to all of the things, right? Like
there's
we're
a
told,
lot to hold.
saludar a todos, right? Everyone else first,
Yeah.
and then if you got to prioritize your studies and stuff, there's all of these conflicts. And so that to say, I did not experience feeling ready, fully skilled, and empowered to balance it all. And I started experiencing deep things. Like I had already gone to college with anxiety disorder and I have a BPD, borderline personality disorder diagnosis, and PTSD. What wasn't diagnosed was that I had OCD. And
Mm,
in college is when my OCD got really, 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 really bad, and that's what caused me to just start withdrawing and like slowly playing around with the ideas of self-harm, moving into all of these things. And so that to say that happened my junior year of college. I got kicked out. I had gotten kicked out of college because of academic probation, dismissal, and that's when I just hit rock bottom. And thankfully was given another chance, and my mom um, put me in therapy, and I was able, thankfully, like I think this is one of the things where it's like I hold with complexity some of these ways that my mom was able to be there for me. And then also it was like, I don't know how to deal with you, go over there, they can fix it. um,
mm-hmm,
I don't know
mm-hmm.
how to hold this. And so whenever I've had it, she's like, go to therapy, but never like maybe it was I needed a hug sometimes,
Yeah.
or like just to be seen in my humanity or to feel safe with her too.
Yeah.
Um, but that to say, that was in my junior year, and I fought hard AF, and I went back to college, and it took me 6 years. My undergrad took me 6 years, and I say that proudly now because if it wasn't for this arrebato, if it wasn't for this space of awareness about like my mental health needed to be a priority for me, um, there's the I went back learning to say no. I had never said no before, and it felt terrible. It still feels
Mm,
uncomfortable to say no.
yeah.
But I learned to start practicing boundaries because I needed them. I recognized I needed them. If I didn't have them, who's gonna see me? Who can hear what's happening inside me but me? And my gap year, I told myself I'm gonna take a gap year because everyone talks about going to grad school afterwards, and I felt shame for not being ready, not feeling ready, not feeling like no, I gotta go the route of taking care of my mental health first. Like I'm not, and feeling guilty for that. But
Mm.
then my gap year turned into gap 3 or 4 years, and I'm glad it did too. It was what I needed. I felt so rooted. I was in Arizona at the time, and I was building a life in my art practice, and all of those choices, all of those things gave me the ability to choose a grad program that actually felt aligned with my vision of my life.
Mm, beautiful.
So yes.
And is that when you went to Costa Rica after college?
No, so that was Costa Rica was part of my comeback plan. So what had happened was that my junior year when I got dismissed, I was actually planning to study abroad in Cuba. Um,
Okay.
and I was in Mexico when I got like my professors, like the study abroad folks were trying to work with the department to be like let her study abroad, it'll be okay. We have this academic plan with her. But I was in Mexico, and they're like, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then in Mexico, they sent me a letter and said, you've been dismissed, and you need to come back. And I was at the airport, and I kid you not, my peers had arrived, and they were like, "Oh, we're catching the plane this way," and I was like, "I can't go with you that way. I have to go this way to catch a flight back home."
Hmm.
And it was the most, I think that was all part. So post like that experience in not going to study abroad in Cuba, getting dismissed, that all happened. And so when I came back to college, I was like, redemption time. And I looked to see what was available, and it was a study abroad course or program in Costa Rica.
Mm-hmm.
And I made sense from both, because I was double majoring in I double majored in Chicanx studies and African American studies, and I minored in social and ethnic relations. And so that was all part of my journey in studying Basel. I redeemed myself, and then I just kept traveling. And now it's
Hmm.
like I have a hard time staying still too much.
Okay, so in terms of timeline, when does marriage fall in, and maybe like also your son, when does he come into the picture?
Yeah, so I got married in 2017, um, moved across country to Washington, and I had my baby in 2018. He's the little
Hmm.
Leo baby,
Ooh,
and
fellow Leo.
yeah, oh really?
Yeah.
And yeah, he's a lot of fun. For me, I wanted to wait until I for me to birth my baby to find out what I was having.
Oh,
And
okay.
it was the funny, I like, in my brain and my spirit, I just only prepared for like girl names. I had not really ever imagined myself having a son, and I just was. So it was just a very interesting experience. Like, what? Oh my god.
Yeah.
Okay. But
Oh.
he's so fun. I love being his mom. He's the coolest little boy.
Mm. And I think, now I do want to shift us back to the mother wound and that kind of stuff about what that actually is and what point you started to learn about these names to what it is that you were experiencing. Just for the listeners who maybe also are like, what is a mother wound, right? That are just coming into this knowledge of it. What triggered you coming into this knowing? Was it the therapy that you went to? Was it certain friends? Or what kind of like led you towards that path?
Where when I became pregnant, I was aware that I already had existing anxieties that I needed to be made aware of. Actually, my midwife also was had asked me if I was a survivor of assault in any way, and I had shared, because I was like, well, yes. And she was like, okay, that might be part of why you're also having anxiety, because you feel so out of control of what's happening inside of your body,
Mm,
and it can feel really violating. So I was grappling with these different experiences of an awareness, that I'm grateful to have, and be able to be responsive to. And it wasn't until postpartum, like experiencing postpartum depression, when your baby's here, earthside with you, and um, I was recognizing that mothering felt, like I felt that block, right? I felt this
mm,
distance, and it it had never happened for me at any point up until then that I had questioned or interrogated my relationship to my mom as like anything other than like, she's done the best she can. I love her, anything for her, like just, 100%, like in she could do no wrong.
right.
Um,
Mm, okay.
and when I became a mom is my inability to feel empower like good enough to be nurturing, or that I'm overwhelming, and these feelings I was experiencing, I was like trying to make sense of like, where do I place this? Is this my anxiety disorder, my OCD? Is this the postpartum
Mm,
depression? What is this that's happening for me, that I feel so hypercritical of myself? I feel like and of course, much of that is rooted in that my experience of having postpartum depression too, and holding space. But um needing my mom when I became a mom was like a real thing. And not feeling like I got that nurturing feeling I needed. And so
Mm-hmm.
the mother wound, as I know it, is just this space of not just and also not just attached to our biological mothers, right? But these spaces of nurturing we need in our lives, in our inner child, right, surfaces throughout our adult lives, and asking and seeking this nurturing,
Yeah.
and we feel it and respond to it in a bunch of different ways. And I think particularly when becoming a mom, knowing that I needed to give in this kind of way and that it's so difficult for me to give that to myself, I was like trying to reconcile with this. So
Mm.
I learned about this concept of remothering,
Yeah.
and practicing giving to myself, my adult self, noticing when my inner child is surfacing and giving that responsiveness and that lovingness and that nurture, and in the micro ways of looking in the mirror and saying it to myself, right? Saying
Yeah.
what I need to hear,
I
making the art and affirming myself that it's
mm.
awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you mentioned something that's really important that sometimes deters people from going into the path of what is a mother wound and taking care of that, which is placing your mother on a pedestal that can be, it is glorified in our culture, but sometimes
Mhm.
can be harmful to yourself. And I think that that's
Yeah,
when you have to debate with yourself if it's worth continuing to explore, right? Because I think a lot of people that run up against maybe these walls, and are feeling the pain, but also are very deep into the conditioning of your mother can do no wrong, your mother should be your best friend, listen to your mother always means well. These are words that we hear constantly over and over again, and so they kind of create this what would we call it, like a catch 22 or conundrum, right, where
right.
we're grappling between like, well, this is how I grew up thinking, but somehow I'm also in pain or something feels off. And yeah, the mother wound is something that I've come into knowledge with in the last couple of years, and I've read a couple of books on it, and that's one thing that's mentioned. And so I just want to like put it out there too for
Yeah,
the listeners, because they say that it's one of the last things you may be inclined to work with in terms of your
absolutely.
healing, since it is so taboo, right, to say that there were things that your mother could have done better or that were not provided by your mother.
Right, absolutely. We can feel guilty, we can feel ashamed. There's just so many layers of moving through and being, and I think a lot of like the tool or the gift in that is recognizing complexity and duality and multiplicity. So like I can, for example, one of the things I think about that I've worked through is like, I have a visibility wound, right? It surfaces in my career choices. It surfaces in how I start projects and don't follow through, or how I struggle with showing up in different ways. Um, and I know that's because I haven't felt seen oftentimes for my fullness and my
Mm-hmm.
lovingness. And I have these distinct memories, right? Like I know my mom did the best she could. And I wish to know her, who she is, right? And I have these distinct memories when I was a child where my feelings would be hurt about something. I wanted to express myself, or even just write her a love letter or something. And I would write it on this little note, and I'll turn it into an paper airplane, and I would throw it into the room that she was at downstairs and run back up, waiting for her to come and tell me she's read it or respond to me, especially in repair. So my mom would not repair with me, right? She
Mm.
was mad, just accept it and move on, or you get silent treatment until the next time. And so I always wanted to repair. And so I would be the one parentified very early, right, in all these different ways, taking care of my younger sister, to say, this hurt my feelings, and this is this and this. And let's like, I want to talk, like, come to my room. And she wouldn't. And
Wow.
so
Wow.
like it wasn't until me becoming a mom and my son is drawing pictures and bringing them to me, I cried. I just
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, like I relive that moment of like wanting to show my mom with joy, like what I'm doing, and it not being received or not feeling seen. And
Mm.
while on a day to day, those things, she may not have realized how impactful that was for me. She did not mean to cause me harm in that moment. My mom
Yeah.
loves me the
Right.
best that she can. And I am still wounded from
Yeah.
those experiences. So I
Mm.
need to see me in that.
Mm-hmm.
And I have an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to also like rewire whatever trauma, ancestral trauma has been passed on to my son, so that when he comes to see and be seen with me,
Yeah.
I'm very aware and like intentional. Our time is protected.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, so, so beautiful. I think that's why they say, your healing impacts generations to come, because the way that you see him is now going to change the way that he perceives himself and also life. When you learn
Mm-hmm.
more about the mother wound, you also learn about that it impacts your relationship to the world and to Madre Tierra, right? And like how you feel and
Mm-hmm.
exist in the world. But in normalizing, these small, tiny moments that hurt a lot, I also want to mention, as I was hearing you, I was like, oh, there were moments that I experienced too that I feel like I want to put out there in case others can resonate the same way that they may resonate with your story. For me, it was like Mother's Day, or Valentine's Day gifts. And so, like, spending time on a little art project and then giving it, and it was kind of just like, thank you. And then, like, oh, let's talk about why you didn't clean this or that. So, those are the types of moments that, like you said, it's likely that on their end, they didn't mean harm, but that doesn't mean they didn't cause harm. And so on our end, we're the ones that now have to do the repairing, because otherwise we can't wait for them to repair that, especially if they don't recognize it as painful. So I, one, want to thank you so much for walking us through such an impactful story and journey. I do know that you're a doula, and you mentioned also being an embodiment coach. So I would
Mm-hmm.
love to know whatever you feel comfortable sharing on how you made that transition into this being something that you do, and what you have going on right now, what it is that you offer at the moment.
Yeah, thank you. So, I have worked in, since I'm an ethnic studies person. I've studied ethnic studies my entire educational career, and I've been teaching in ethnic studies and designing ethnic studies models for programs that I've been in. And it's been really fulfilling, particularly because I enjoy working with youth um, and imagining what it looks like just to pour love into these growing lives, right?
Mm,
And possibility, because I know it carries, right? I'm also a gardener, so I love plant metaphors all of the time. So I'm always thinking of how I'm stewarding knowledge and resources. And becoming a mom awakened me to this experience in motherhood that I just wasn't fully aware of the depth of what it means. Like my activism has changed so much,
mm,
in the recognition that I have such a deep responsibility and an opportunity on a day to day to walk with this life and to grow. And so, this experience of me growing alongside my child, the birth of a child is the birth of a mother. Um, with It also began with me having a doula of my own. So when I was in Washington without a community, um, without any local cultura, like I
mm,
was like,
mm-hmm.
how am I gonna do my cuarentena? Like no family, nobody up there.
Yeah.
Um, and I was like craving things I couldn't have. And so I had to find support system for myself. And so for me, having that experience of feeling alone, um, and then having a doula who's able to be a source of light, of affirmation, of non-judgment, it was everything I needed, particularly because I was also in an abusive marriage, right? So
Mm,
my doula in many ways saved my life, saved my baby's life, made it like literally the day I was giving birth, on the when I was giving birth, I because she helped me so much with my breath work and preparing. I was doing prenatal yoga. I was preparing for like a natural labor. That is what I had wanted, and I was able to work with her to like practice my breath work. And the doctors were not even ready for me when the baby was ready to come, and I was like, "No, it's coming right now." Or the baby's coming right now. And my doula was like, I'll catch it. But they like came in the split second. It was a whole, I had, my birth story is a whole other thing. But that to say, having a doula affirmed what I felt was real already something within my spirit, which was to be a nurturer and to be like a light source and hold space. I love holding space for others, and um, so that became a natural pathway into now me becoming a doula, where I get to integrate like cultural practices and awareness and that alchemy alongside this awareness of like remothering and recognizing that the birth of a baby is the birth of a mother. So with that,
Mm-hmm.
there's an opportunity to grow into your version of motherhood, right? What does that look like for you, where you are included? And I think that's not often um, talked about when people want to see the new baby. How's the baby? How's the new baby? But people don't often ask, like, how's it feeling for you? Like, how's your mental health? How, like, what do you miss? What do you love now? What are those
Yeah.
transitions for you? Um, do you want, let me come over so you can take a hot shower, or let me clean your house so you can just sit with your baby. Like these practices of revillaging and kinship building in our communities is an area that I feel really passionate about, and I want to support people in moving out of isolation and feeling like you have to be super mujer to do
Mm.
everything alone, like, or that looks like doing everything alone, because you can be superwoman and still say I need help, and to be able to also feel that you can ask for help, and that there you will be received, right? Because that's
Mm.
a big fear we often experience. So embodiment coaching is where another piece of this journey, where to me it means feeling fully present and witnessing yourself, not just in your body, but your mind and your spirit and your wholeness and your integrity, and knowing that you are a necessary part of your ecosystem, and
Mm.
you're in relationship with everything, right? Everything is in
Yeah.
communication. And so there's there's lessons and emergence all around us, and I think being able to embody those lessons and nurture simplicity within us and compassion and um, these practices of recognizing our internal wisdom, connecting with it, your
Mm-hmm.
intuition, your
Mm-hmm.
umbilical knowledge. I like to like it's like I see
Aw.
it, and it's right there in your umbilical,
Yeah.
And when we can reconnect with that and remember, right? Remember and remember, we are able
Mm-hmm.
to move into thrivance together, right?
Yeah.
Like as a community.
Yeah.
And that's my hope for our world, right? I want all the
Mm.
mamas to feel nourished. And I want all the comadres to feel empowered too, right? In
Mm-hmm.
kinship with each other. So I am a doula, but I also offer embodiment coaching so that I can support this villaging of everyone, because we all need inner niña healing and opportunities to connect with our joy and our love and our light and our silliness, and those
Mm-hmm.
practices of play that come along into play in both arenas. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so beautiful. And I think that that work is so important. And I love your vision of it. You know, I love how it's kind of integrative of all aspects. And I think sometimes even words can fall short of what that actually can feel like and be like, and the transformation that that can cause for people. So it already, in my mind, already is causing this shift of like, it could be so different, and how cool that
Oh my
you're creating
gosh.
that experience.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope it is. I always hope that people can feel like, the like birthing and like that transition that that, and I always use birthing as like an analogy too, because imagine how many times we've birthed projects or birthed
Mm.
new versions of ourselves as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's this tension, there's this pain, and you return to your breath, right? Embodiment is attached to this space of awareness. Like your breath is your guide, and that pain has a purpose, right? We learn
Yeah.
this in labor, and we also know that there's signals, right? Cues that we can listen to and grow. Like we've disconnected from internal cues oftentimes about what's
Mm.
happening and how our inner world is experiencing our outer world.
Mm-hmm.
And then we end up frazzled, and then we end up feeling like we're in survival mode, or like even resentful of the demands around us, particularly in motherhood. That can feel really like more shame, more fear, more stress, right? So a doula or like an embodiment coach can support the practice of being resourced internally and
Mm-hmm.
connecting to your resources available to you in your ecosystem so that you can create patterns and practices that feel aligned with your vision of that journey.
Yeah, I love that. So, I have a couple more questions for you, but I do want to make sure that people know where they can find you.
Yes, you all can follow me on Instagram at embodied.luna, or if you want to follow my personal page, it's very sassy. It's at never your mija. Very much a signal to my inner child reclaiming her power. And if you want to check out my website, it's embodiedluna.com. You can see my
Mm.
offerings there.
All right. So the next couple of questions are about resources. So maybe people that are tuning in and are like, "Ooh, I resonate so much." What are some resources that we can share with them? And the first question for you is, what is your favorite healing or mindful tool?
Ooh, my favorite healing or mindful tool is definitely going to be EFT tapping. You can find heck of videos on YouTube, and they're full of affirmations. And you can, once you get comfortable, design your own affirmations and practice EFT.
Okay.
Mhm.
What is a habit that you do for yourself every single day?
Every single day, I have my cafecito and chill in the morning. So I try to make sure I wake up before my little one, and that sacred morning time, alone time, that solitude giving to myself before I give to the world is the the magic of what makes me in thrivance mode.
Love it. What is a song that you listen to when you need to feel inspired?
Thames Free Mind. That is my motherhood anthem.
Quote or advice that you often refer back to?
Mm. I always refer back to this Gloria Saldúa quote that says, Caminante no hay puentes, se hace puentes al andar. So I know, isn't it good?
Yeah.
So you build the bridges as you go, right?
So
Make it
beautiful.
happen.
Yeah. Influencer that you follow that leaves you feeling positively inspired.
Latinx estrangement. I have been
Mm.
so grateful for her light and feeling affirmed in my practices of remothering myself and um, creating new ways of defining what familia looks like for us in our healing journey.
And what is a feel good or powerful book or movie?
Ooh, feel good, powerful book or movie. Everything, everywhere, all the time. I think is that I think that's what you're talking about. Everything, everywhere.
Is
Oh,
it?
everything, everywhere, all at once. Ah,
Okay, okay. Oh
I
my
say it all the time
gosh.
because it feels like all the time.
Okay. I have interesting thoughts about this movie. It's not what I thought it would be, but okay, okay.
It's so complex. It
It
makes me feel
is.
so meta.
Yeah, it is, it is. All right. Pozole o tamales?
Oh, pozole. Pozole.
Champurrado or hot chocolate?
Champurrado.
Bad
Definitely
Bunny,
champurrado.
Bad Bunny or Daddy Yankee?
Ooh, Bad Bunny, even though my baby calls him Good Bunny, I gotta call him Good Bunny at home because he
Aw.
says, no don't like that. Yeah, anyway. Funny.
Concha de vainilla o chocolate?
Oh my gosh, this is a difficult question. Honestly, chocolate. Nah, I don't know. Vanilla, vanilla. I'm gonna change it because I think about dipping it in the chocolate in the champurrado. Vanilla, vanilla.
Okay. And then what is your taco order?
Ooh, I'm always getting dos de carnitas, dos de adobada, y dos de asado.
Okay, con todo o la pura
Extra
carne.
lima. No, con todo.
Con todo.
I want to
Okay.
be enchilada.
Salsa verde o roja?
Verde.
Verde. Okay. Ooh. Well, that's the end of the questions for today. Thank you for
Ooh, these are
answering
good.
these
I'm hungry.
very, yeah, these very controversial questions that I add in the end.
I know, oh my gosh.
But
Don't come for me, y'all.
yeah. Yes, yes. But overall, thank you so, so much for coming on and for sharing your story. I'm sure there was a lot that we could have talked about too, but I think and I hope that those listening find it inspiring and that if they resonate, they check out the resources that you've mentioned. Before I close out this episode, is there anything else that you would like to say?
I'm just so grateful. And as you shared, I hope whoever's listening just feels empowered to connect. And thank you for hosting this space. This is so medicinal and literally, as your title says, healing
Hmm.
for my experience. So thank you for giving me space to share.
Yay. Thank you for being here. So, if you guys found this episode helpful, please share it with your amigas, amigos, amigues. I hope you guys have a good day. And remember, first gen, I love you, I love me, and I can't wait for you to love yourself. Bye.